Welcome to the IpX True North Podcast, where we connect people, processes, and tools.
Greetings to everyone, and welcome back to the IpX True North Podcast. I am your host, Brandy Taylor, and we have an exciting episode lined up for you today. We're diving into the world of Crystal Onyx, a game changer in the realm of rapid data migration services. And joining us today is Mr. Tony Cahill, an industry expert with a wealth of knowledge and insights to share. Tony will help us explore Crystal Onyx and how it's transforming data management and boosting business efficiency. So sit back, relax, and get ready for a really informative and engaging discussion with Tony. Thanks so much for joining me, Tony.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Brandy. Great to be with you and I appreciate the invitation.
Excellent. All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, just to kind of kick this thing off a little bit, why don't you just give us a little bit of your background? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been working in the whole data management area, data storage, digital asset management for many years, probably longer than I care to admit. It's been around 20 years. So, I've gone through just a lot of different industries, worked with a lot of different companies, seen a lot of different things. And it scales from starting out working in supply chain in the Fortune 500, right when ERP systems were all the rave. So then got into trying to do something new and different, do a startup company, moved to California like everyone was doing around the early 2000s and the dot-com boom. And I found myself selling the first parallel RAID storage system, parallel ATA RAID storage systems to dot-coms, which is an amazing business to be in for about 8 months. And then, dot-com bubble burst. And so got to rethink, what do I want to do? And so then found myself into medical imaging, working with radiology and implementing MRIs and the whole concept of going from the film to digital, which was great, opened the door to a lot. Then, one thing leads to another, and I found myself in media and entertainment. Ended up being a director of engineering, working with studios and developing the first digital asset management solutions for editing and workflows as things are going from film and tape into the whole digital process. So we were able to develop and design some of the first original digital process workflows from camera into the editing and post out through distribution. And then where I am now, found myself into working more in the enterprise class, working with high performance computing. Found myself then at this company about 10 years ago as the senior solutions architect, implementing the first way of storage and data and how does it get implemented. And with the whole proliferation of storage going on, that then became the introduction of cloud. And now we've got AI initiatives, and it's just been an evolution of all these great technologies. And at the heart of it is, how do you manage the data? How does it get stored? Does it get used? How is it protected? What's the value in it? And that's really where I've really focused my career path and view is data is the lifeblood of any organization. So how do we work with it? How do we manage it? How do we make sure it's working for us rather than the other way around? And that's really critical of why I decided to launch Crystal Onyx, was to really continue to address that issue. And actually, I think for the first time, do something very unique and original that has not been done before and puts a new flag in the sand that everyone can now start marching toward.
Very neat. Well, thanks for your background. It sounds like you have a lot of amazing different experience coming from a lot of different lenses. And I think that really makes Crystal Onyx kind of unique in that perspective, is that you're able to really speak from a number of different perspectives.
Absolutely.
So, thinking about, Crystal Onyx, I think it'd be helpful to just talk a little bit about its mission and, give us like the 50,000-foot view of Crystal Onyx and what it does.
So Crystal Onyx is intelligent data management utility. And the reason we call it a utility is it's designed for today's modern enterprise. And the difference between a software platform, software product versus a utility, at least as I define it, is a utility makes everything better. It can be put into any ecosystem, any organization, and it's going to connect in the way it needs to connect and enhance the capabilities so that it enables the flow of data in this case, and enables all the systems and all the processes to align better to the core objective of the organization. And also, more importantly, enables people and the tools that they use for their job and their roles to actually do what they're supposed to do, what they need to do, in order to create the most successful outcomes possible, which ultimately then serves the best output or best outcome for the customer.
Okay, amazing. And at IPX, data is our lifeblood, right? Like it's
Right.
everything that we do. It's what everyone is trying to do. Everyone is trying to create their digital thread and just harness all of the data that they have. And especially I feel like in this world where, we're really, we call it drip, data rich, information poor, is we have so much data, but how do we make sure we know where it's at? How do we understand what data we have and then use it to our advantage to use it to make it good?
Exactly. When one has value, what doesn't?
Exactly.
What doesn't? And there's to the point now, there's so much that it's overwhelming. And how do you really drill down and find, okay, what's the diamonds in the rough, right? What's the gold nuggets? And what is going to really make a difference and have impact?
Yeah.
And those are the key questions that as we go on in this world is going to become much more significant. And I think who have the ability to really grasp that for their business, for their enterprise, for whatever they're doing, they're going to have a leg up.
We're getting more and more of it every single day as we speak.
Absolutely.
And how do we handle that, right? What do
Yeah,
we want to do with it? Are we using that data? Are we not using that data? And how do we want to keep it? It's expensive to maintain. So
exactly.
that we're
And
thinking.
part of that is managing it. If you look at vendors, any storage vendor, and let's just pick one, right? Isilon, Dell Isilon, or Hitachi, add your favorite. If you run out of storage space, someone bought 5 petabytes of storage. 2 years later, it's full. You call up the vendor and they say, I'm full. The first question is like, oh, that's too bad. Would you like to buy another? Well, maybe that might be the right decision, or maybe not. And so part of data management is understanding one is let's first get just total visibility to what we have, and especially in enterprise, right? Where you have organizations that have come together, merged, you have different cultures, different processes, different systems. And so you've got this organic patchwork of different technologies that most of the time we see don't connect together. They don't play together. It's a huge undertaking to make all of these different silos actually converge and be able to work to be effective. So the first thing that we do is the advantage of Crystal Onyx is that it goes in and very quickly by scanning files. It could do millions of files an hour, provides quickly a clear view of what's there. And what I mean by what's there is just not that we have a file, it's what's the name, who is it, who's the owner, how long has it been accessed, when was it last accessed, when was it last modified, right? So where is it being used by? All those questions, being able to quickly assess that just within minutes is huge. And it goes back to the whole idea, knowledge is power. If you can get knowledge about and visibility about what you have, now you're able to start making some decisions about the impact and what's best for the organization. So if we have, again, going back to our vendor with the 5 petabytes, right? It's full after 2 years. Well, come to find out that everything got dumped there, but nothing's been accessed. So 75% of it is just stale data. Is that really where you want to keep it? Well, then the question is, well, no, we don't. But if we move it, everyone's going to yell at me. And I don't want to get yelled at because I get yelled at all the time, right? And that's typically like the vice president of IT or CIO. It's just our people are yelling if we move it. So how about if you can move it but still be able to provide the visibility to it through that user application or service as if it was sitting right there, even though it's now migrated somewhere else that's more conducive, more effective, it makes more sense. And so that's part of what we do. And that's the power of what we do next after we get that clear view is then being able to create virtualization. And the power of virtualization is huge because we're uncoupling data from storage and allowing it to flow where it needs to flow based on life cycle, use case, and we can get very granular down to, departments, down to even single users about how the flow of data is going to work. So that's our first, I would say, testament of what we do. Clear view and quick access, easily for any application, user, or service that's within the organization. And then because of we're able to migrate things automatically using orchestration tools, which are just part of the product, you've got amazing workflows working behind the scenes that are doing these migrations to different storage environments, translating from storage vendor to storage vendor, moving things up to cloud, going to LTO libraries, or wherever, or a combination of everything. to make sure that all the files are now living where they need to be living based upon the use case and usability of the data. What's valuable, what's sensitive, what's critical, what's now not, we still need to keep it, but maybe we don't need to keep it in our primary versus why do we still have that? We haven't touched it for 10 years and our data retention policy is a 7-year. Let's get rid of it. It's actually can be a detriment to have some of that. So, and again, that's all based upon the organization, all based upon what is the policy, what's our policy of data management, how do we want to implement it, and how do we want to best manage it. The other critical thing that we do is, cybersecurity is becoming a big issue, and we're seeing an uptick in a lot of what I call hack attacks, right? Cybersecurity attacks. And this includes both viruses, different types of exposure, ransomware, I mean, you name it, we're seeing across the board. So having that another line of defense in there that ensures that all of the sensitive and critical data that we've identified is now protected by automatically creating a copy of it onto an immutable storage environment or an air-gapped and immutable storage environment. Now, if something, God forbid, happens, there's a cyber attack, there's a virus, there's ransomware that's attacked, that's now caused an issue. It's now very easy to run a playbook, wipe those servers, and then go back and restore the data back to the online available position at any point in time. So we can look at version management control and then say, let's go back 5 days ago, restore everything that needs to be restored, and do it very quickly so that within hours to the next day, the organization's back up and running. And we've seen and proven that over and over that that's possible and does work.
I love the concept, right? I love the idea. And I think everyone can resonate with this, right? Is that, how many logins do we have for all of the tools that we need for our businesses?
Oh my gosh.
And so to have a quick access, a one-stop shop like this, where you can log into one tool and have the ability to see everything that you have and be able to utilize that to your advantage, it's just a huge efficiency gain for organizations.
Yes. And something that, we have proven over and over again over the years now as we've developed this. So it has become a game changer for a lot of organizations.
Very neat. And thinking about some of the additional features, and you're talking about a number of key elements here already. When people go and look at this kind of a tool and try to do some market comparisons, tell me a little bit more about Crystal Onyx. How is it unique from other players in the market?
Well, thank you. That's a good question. So, I just was at a high performance computing show a couple of weeks ago. And this is where you go to this show and you're exhibiting or you're part of it, where you're dealing with just massive amounts of data, right? You're talking about all of the GPUs. It's AI on steroids, essentially. So, massive amounts of parallel file system, petabytes and petabytes up to exabytes. We're talking massive data scales. And looking around, I still see that Crystal Onyx is very uniquely positioned. So what is unique and what makes it unique is the ability of going out and scanning all these files everywhere. And what we do is we create a global namespace, which is a virtual representation of all of the data and the files that we see across all these different storage environments, and then are able to logically group it together. So I could take something from a parallel file system, an Lustre file system, or from Hitachi, from Isilon, and be able to, or even VAST, and be able to pull all that together under one logical heading, one virtual directory, and then break that out. And now that I have that, one is that I can start using queries to find it very quickly, start to apply those same queries for orchestration and file movement, but I can also then export that as a file system so that I can now have any user application service that's within the enterprise, mount that just like they would a storage system. But now they're seeing all the data across all the different storage platforms at a single spot and are able to access it just if it was sitting, on a single disk system. So that's really unique. Most everyone else is using some sort of stubs, some sort of agent, some sort of HSM, hierarchical storage management, to stub where things were, like leaving breadcrumbs, so that I can trace my steps to get back to it. And that works really well when you have like 2 or 3 different types of storage systems. But now as we've expanded, organizations have grown, our storage requirements have ballooned to where we're incorporating now cloud, remote locations, multiple different data centers, multiple different types of technologies. doing those type of breadcrumbs gets very, very challenging because it's now adding another level of matrix on top of it. And so one of the core philosophies when we first set out to design this is that we believe that any company, any organization should never be beholden to anyone for their data. And that includes us. So if we're a tool, we provide value, that's something you're going to want to keep around. If we don't add value, we shouldn't be there in the first place. And that was really the core fundamental philosophy, which goes completely in the face of everyone else I know. Everyone is always wants, let's get sticky, right? Let's give them something, we'll wrap it up, make sure that you can't get away. And you see that today with even cloud. Once you put it up on cloud, it's easy to put data up there. Everyone was saying, give me your data for free. Now, if you want to get it out, that becomes a little more challenging and a lot more costly. So that's where we can go in. And not only do we make that as far as our tenant, but now we're also enabling that same power for a customer. So they can go in and say, okay, if we need to migrate it and we want to go from, like, say, an SMB storage to an NFS or to an S3, we can do that automatically, be able to translate the data itself and write it natively to the storage environment using our power of virtualization. And so it just provides a tremendous tool to start doing some really cool things. And that's why I'm really branding it as a utility, because we're not going in to replace anything. We're just looking to make everything else run better.
Yeah, it's just making everything really accessible at any
That's,
time. So tell me a little bit more. Is there more you can share about like the secret sauce? How does it do this? Like, how does it manage such large quantities of data in so seamlessly, without really organizations even really knowing that this is happening? It's not taxing the system.
not taxing the system, yes. That was key and critical. That's one of the reasons why it's taken so long. This has been in process for a total of 9 years now. We released it about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So we're currently on version 3.3. We're about to release 3.4. So it's got a lot of testing. It's gone through the crucible. And so what we found early on, what I like to say is that we start where everyone else fails. A lot of any software that goes out there can do 1 million files, let's say, handle 100 terabytes up to a couple petabytes. Now, if you want to go into hundreds of millions of files, billions of files, you have to rethink the way you're approaching it. And so part of that is, how do you scale? How do you create an ability to do this? So the entire Crystal Onyx is all based upon a multi-processed, multi-threaded that allows it with a very, very powerful NoSQL database. And we also employ a bunch of different stateless databases to help manage this as well. So it's a locked step where we are running a massive parallelization across the cluster, across multiple nodes with multiple threads going, and tracking everything. And because at the heart of it is we are a metadata management database, that's the core. That's where we're tracking and creating a map and the ledger of what's going on, and then tracking files as they get moved or are moved from point to point. But what we found is that the way we are able to parallelize this and can on the fly create, different ways of doing it. So we can group and essentially make one big straw happen out of like 20 nodes in a cluster. We can also then redistribute that to have a lot of little itty bitty straws like across and parallelize those. So it all depends upon what's the customer environment look like, what's the bandwidth, what's the network, and then we optimize everything and tune it to get the best performance possible. And we're finding, the largest environments that we have are billions of files managing up to 3,500 petabytes, as I believe is the largest one right now. And that's across 20 nodes. And then we scale. So we have some customers that start with a single node, single server. And then as they grow, they add more. Now we have high availability. So we have 3 nodes running. And as they grow, then we add more and add more and add more. So it's never about the amount of data. It's about how do we manage it and make sure that it's working and working correctly. And part of the whole idea is that because we have this very, very high-powered software with backup, because we have the system running with this whole scaling database, when we put the workflow implementation, the workflow modules in front of it, which is also part of the product, we're able to actually distribute all of the processes that are going on across the node sets So in, let's say, like a 3-node or a 5-node system, every node is both doing the scanning, the touching, and the IO processing of everything. And we're able to run multiple jobs in parallel. So that's an unprecedented speed and performance that I haven't seen elsewhere. And the fact is that there's no breadcrumbs left behind, and things are just moving based upon policies that are set by the organization. It's just a game changer. So you're really able to completely manage the environment successfully and then carve up use cases. What makes sense for how do we want to implement and manage this department versus department B, department C, department E?
It's clear that it's taken a long time to get to this position of where you're at and your ability to do this. It gets detailed fast, right?
Yes, it does.
It's hard to talk about it in a simple way. There's definitely a lot that goes into this kind of capability. So thinking about the Crystal Onyx and, in your position and in your vision, do you have a guiding vision for where the tool's going to go? Is there anything specific of what you feel that you've done to steer the company to its current position?
Yeah, part of this is when I got involved with it, before that I had started my own company, and it was on the heels of doing this very novel, unique digital asset storage and archive management system. It was called Constellation. And we was very successful. We sold to studios. Probably the biggest organization that acquired it at that point was McDonald's. So you're talking about just, you know how big McDonald's is, touches a lot of pieces there. And so my next goal was I was going to take that to the next level. And so I had this grand idea, went out, started my company, kind of had the entrepreneurial seizure. And then I realized I don't know what I'm doing. I am in over my head. So I went out, started finding people I could work with, understand, would help me. Okay, how do you take this idea, really take it to market, start raising money, doing all the things, startup entrepreneurs do. So I got a crash course in it and started to raise money. And by the third time of doing it, getting to the 95-yard line, the deal fell apart for the third time. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this to my family. And so that time I learned about a company that was called StrongLink. And StrongLink was coming up with some very cool things. And they were actually had the same idea as I did, except that they were a little bit farther ahead and they already had money. So I ended up having a call with the CEO. We had just hit it off, and I actually ended up becoming the first hire and the senior solutions architect for the company. So from the ground up, was able to really add my 2 cents in and really help steer where my vision was, and I could see where this can go. And I just love the idea about this whole virtualization concept because I saw the power of what it could do if you were able to turn it up at scale. And so for the next 5, 6 years, that's what we did is had a great team involved in developing something that had never been done before. And the ability to not only to scan, virtualize, migrate files around without any stubs and manage it all through metadata. And then even on top of that, export it as another file system so that you're enforcing all of the ACLs and permissions of that SMB Active Directory file system, or as an S3 file bucket endpoint, or as an NFS file system was just amazing at the technology that goes in to make this happen. And so when the company that was backing it actually put in $30 million behind it to make this work. And then they decided, it didn't fit with what their goals and plans were. And so I was left at that point now to become vice president of field operations. So I'd seen every customer. I'd put in almost every system out there in the world over the course of time. So I ended up making a deal with them and was able to acquire all the software, all the IP, licensing rights, and took that into market. And when I really started looking at this, I realized this has been marketing wrong. This has been trying to take this to market and pushing against something that shouldn't be pushed against. And so that's where my whole idea about, okay, what this is doing is providing clear view. It's providing clarity. Oh, Crystal. Well, Crystal is clarity. And then the other thing I realized is that we're always talking about ransomware and protection and being able to orchestrate file movement to make sure that data is protected. Okay, well, Onyx, Crystal Onyx. So Onyx is stone of protection, right? So it's like, great. What a great way to get our feet on the ground and take a different path and a different direction on this. So take Crystal Onyx, and that's really where the name came from. And then I was fortunate enough that I reached out to my entire core dev team that, I've worked with for the past 9, 10, between 6 to 10 years, depending, with the team. And each one of them said, yes, I'll join. I'll join you. I want to continue working on this because they all believe like this has never been done before. We want to see this through. And so I was able to get 100% everybody back. So it's like the complete underdog story, right? We're the Boston Red Sox. We're coming out on top, finally winning the World Series. But we're excited. And everyone has this whole vision of what this can do. And we're just excited to take all these next steps because it's going to really transform the way things are being done right now, as far as it relates to storage, cloud, AI. It's good. We're going to have some game-changing approaches that are going to really make a strong, very significant impact into the marketplace.
Well, it's clear to me that Crystal Onyx is quite industry agnostic, right? Like it's a tool that anyone can use, and there's really a lot of great applications and in different scenarios that make a ton of sense for this. Are there any specific industries or businesses that you find it's just really something that they can't live without?
Where we really got to cut our teeth on, and we decided to go after some of the most challenging data environments in the world. I mean, that's where we decided if we're going to go big, we're going to go big. So, we saw a lot of the organizations that are dealing with curation and preservation. So we've got just a bunch of unstructured data coming in across multiple different systems. And how do you manage it, virtualize it? So that includes like working with studios, some Hollywood studios like Sony, also different post groups. So working with some episodics like America's Got Talent and Fremantle, working with Library of Congress, National Archives, where you've just got these massive, massive libraries of things. And then we looked at also where's the flow of data looking, where's that needed? So the need of being able to get things in, get things out, migrate, store, preserve. And that also we saw then, with the high performance computing, especially around research institutions. So we've done a lot with higher education at university levels. We're working and supporting the different labs because there's just so much data coming in that has to be stored, analyzed, and then either some of it archived, some of it distributed, some of it pulled back out, and all happening at once. And that led us in like working over at NASA too. So managing all the data that's coming off of the International Space Station or part of the SLS rocket initiative. Just a massive amounts of data, sensor images, documents, just everything getting thrown at you at once. How do you manage it? Where does it go? How does it get stored? Assessed of what's going on, and then being able to redistribute access very quickly and easily back to the different labs, departments who are needing to run the analysis they're doing in order to then create, an understanding and through their applications and processes. So it's just, it's real time, plus then staging and going back over and redoing things. So it's a constant evolution. And so taking that forward, as we go now over the last number of years, we've seen that this is now opened up. So now it's not just like, preservation, curation. It's now going in and we're seeing manufacturing. We're seeing a lot of service-based business, also in finance, especially in small, medium banks, where the same challenges, same things. Data's coming in, it's a flood. How are we storing it correctly? Making sure that there's not mistakes and we're not creating duplicates and redundant copies. And then how do we manage the flow of what's critical, what's not critical, what needs to get stored and preserved, what is only going to have a small, short shelf life, and then making sure it's just discarded correctly or disposed of correctly. Because the last thing you want to do is have this sensitive information be accessible that no one's paying attention to, that someone can now use as a security risk. That becomes very important. And it is becoming even more important today than it was even 2 years ago.
Yeah, anyone with a huge amount of data, whether they're creating it, moving it, sorting it, thinking about it from a global perspective, it's just going to be a huge challenge.
Yeah, and it's mind-boggling, right? Because it's too much. The human mind can only deal with certain things, right?
Yeah.
We're optimized to remember 7 things at once. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
7 billion. And so that becomes a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, historically, people do this manually. And we're getting to the point long ago at this point where this is no longer something we can do manually. You can't have enough heads to do this.
Correct.
and to keep these things organized and understood. So yeah, it's no longer just a pain point. It can be crippling. So I guess, I want to think a little bit more about, the security piece and talk a little bit about that, because I think it's really huge. So critical data is something, it's not just about the amount of data and moving it around. It's how do we manage the security of it? And tell me a little bit more about how does Crystal Onyx protect that data that it's managing? If it's accessing all of these tools and able to query all of this, how are we keeping it secure?
Right. So there's a couple different ways that we approach this. And again, for any organization, there's no single bullet. You can't just say, I'm going to put in this thing and all of a sudden, God bless, I am protected no matter what, right? Not going to happen. So it's putting a strategy in place. And hopefully right now, hopefully an organization has some sort of virus security, right? So it starts with having your virus scan, right? And then you've got, depending on how the organization's now been implemented, there's a lot of cybersecurity tools, sniffers and things that can go out. Also looking at, threat protection, right? Who is trying to get in doing denial of service? Who's doing what? Where is this coming from? So there's a lot of tools now that are really, really good at being able to detect, monitor, and identify, okay, where are bad actors? What's going on? So while that's happening, that's great. And those are very, very important tools. Now, the other things to look at to even shore it up further is, okay, what's our risk of exposure? So within all of this data footprints we have, what's within the confines of an office? Do we have multiple offices? Do we have multiple data centers? So what's that footprint look like? Then beyond that, then are we working with cloud? Are we working with multiple clouds? Now everyone went to a single cloud, to a multi-cloud, now to like maybe the 3 or 4, all with different security risks and also controls. And how are those all working together? So we looked at that and said, okay, from a data standpoint, then if all that's working, what's another level that we could add that will just be that icing on the cake, right? So it's the last resort type of thing. And so because we found is that, we're all human. Humans do make mistakes. Someone left the front door open. Someone left the crack open. Ooh, look at this shiny object I picked up on the parking lot. It's a USB stick. Let me put in and see what's on there. Put it in your computer. Now you've just affected your computer and everyone else's as well. So those things happen. We hear those stories over and over again. So we looked at that and says, well, you're never going to remove human component. It's required, but also that's probably, if you ask any security expert, they said that's your number one issue of vulnerability. So in all of these cases, everyone's going after data. That's, again, the lifeblood, but that's also what these organizations and bad actors are targeting. So how do we add protection to the data itself? And so one of the ways we looked at this is if we can look at data, and again, we can start migrating, moving, copying files, and doing it in a way that is unobtrusive and seamless to the entire organization, all of the users, all the applications, all the services that are being used to access the data and do what it needs to do. How can we create this immutable copy, right? And so you've heard about, well, we're going to copy it over to immutable. We're going to copy it this way, but do it in a way that actually it's doing it with data provenance, data lineage, version management controls, so that I can now, when I'm going on, I'm seeing what's new and different every time. I'm now creating a version control copy of that on this immutable storage that I've defined. It could be a cloud, immutable cloud, or it could be like an LTFS library running an LTO archive. And that's my copy of last resort. And if you look at it as an LTO library, an LTFS, the one thing I love about those is that it is air gapped, right? I write something, I take it offline, it's now sitting in a shell in a slot. So if anything happens, I can't get access to it until I reload the data. So it cannot be altered in any way. So, and that's something that I've got control of within my operation. So LTO libraries have always kind of been, I consider them the ugly stepchild of IT. They've always been very difficult to work with, very challenging. So we thought, well, if we can incorporate this in where it now becomes part of the virtualization of data, then we can treat it just like another storage environment, just like another disk environment. And so we're able to write data to it, manage it, and then be able to pull it back on auto recall or by workflow directly. That's all driven by the application use or users' requests coming in. So it's no longer having to go out to a third-party application or call up IT Joe and then ask him to go load the tapes. It's actually now part of the entire storage IT ecosphere that can now manage automatically. So I do like that. And again, some organizations will say, well, that works for us and it doesn't work. Great. So if you have cloud, if you have like AWS Glacier, great. Let's use that as our immutable storage, by the way, which puts it on tape anyway. So I kind of found it funny that AWS is the largest consumer of LTFS tape in the world. So it's still going to tape. And that's not going to change because it's the safest, lowest cost tier of storage available, hands down. And so by implementing it the right way, it becomes something that can now be managed easily and just part of that automation ecosphere that gives you another level of protection. So in short, as long as we identify an immutable storage, whether it's on a cloud, it's on LTFS, it's some sort of disk system that write once and you can't alter it, great. And then that becomes our data lineage version control. So that if, God forbid, something happens and say, okay, this occurred 3 days ago, 5 days ago, we can go back and say, let's wipe the servers, let's restore the data that was affected and have it back exactly as it existed from 3 days ago, 5 days ago. So that's one element that I think is huge and provides the ability to protect an organization's integrity to operate so that you're no longer beholden to a ransomware having to pay millions of dollars and hope you get the key. The other thing we do with this is that there's no backup keys. So there's nothing that can be held hostage. The other key thing is we can add another security layer. When we saw this, we thought, well, let's add something else here that could be helpful. And so you have the ability of putting a security wrapper around a file. So this can be used on high-use storage environments, whereas the data is getting written and it's being written by Crystal Onyx into that store. We're now writing the file with a security wrapper that only provides the ability by somebody who's coming in through the known process or known way with the proper AD permissions and credentials is able to access that file. Otherwise, if someone else gets it, it's completely unusable, cannot be cracked by that. And that's something you can turn on or turn off. So on my high use storage, I can actually implement that as a security feature. And when it gets copied over to somewhere else, it goes back to its original data file structure. So we saw that adds another level of security on top of. And we've had customers actually where we had 2 storage environments. They got hacked. Someone was coming in and trying to steal information. They went to the one, couldn't get any access, couldn't figure out what it was. They skipped over it, went to the second one. That was all files and directory structures that were available, started hacking that. They got in for about 4 hours worth, and our system actually detected it and started shutting down all of the virtualization exports. So they were losing access to it. We got a call saying, your software doesn't work. No one can get access to anything. Like, okay, well, we remote in, take a look around and say, you've been hacked. And not only been hacked, but they started stealing stuff. Oh, how long has it been going on? It's been weeks, it's been months. No, it's been 4 hours. So it was detected in 4 hours, shut down. They only got like 2 files. We were able to then run the playbook. They wiped their servers, restored them. Everything got restored back from immutable storage from an LTO library, and they were back up and running the next morning.
Amazing. You mentioned a little while back about the human element. I know, thinking about some of the issues that we deal with at IPX with some of our clients and our customers is tools are not always connected. And so there's a lot of copy pasting of files and data. And so tell me a little more, is there something there that Crystal Onyx could do to help identify redundancies and maybe help, just manage some of those issues?
Yeah, there is. So when you get into customers like what IPX serves, right? Your focus is on dealing in complex manufacturing processes, really where I see your focus. And that is has unique challenges within itself because you're creating essentially a pipeline, right, of process. And everyone in that process needs access to the same data, but not all of it once. And usually it's an aggregate of something has to happen first in an earlier stage before I can actually do my bit and add to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to call it like the scatter gather process. And it comes from what we did within media and entertainment. In making a movie, a theatrical movie, it takes 27 departments. Each department has their own thing and it has to happen in a very, very sequence process. And it doesn't happen all at once. And usually it happens within large spanses of time in between. But it's all got to be completely managed and cohesive. So that in itself started me thinking of like, okay, in a process, how do we create it where I'm doing something, but then once I've added it, triggers the event for a copy or a move of a file. So something goes back up as a child that's now been done as a process. And then part of that data set, or maybe it's a whole new piece, data files that now get set into another workflow bucket. So it could be like a drop folder, watch folder that somebody else now is notified about that they can pull up, do what's needed. So it's no longer the copy paste. It's actually more about the right files with the right information are showing up at someone's desktop or someone's mounted folder on their desktop with the instruction set of here's what I need to do next. And their application now has been the tool that they're using. So it's very similar to like a Library of Congress with the copyright process. It's 23 different VM groups that are just running and processing files in this assembly-like process. And so something like that becomes very, very easy to implement when you have the tools behind it that can preserve all of the data and manage it correctly, but then also are managing the children and then also, adding to it. And that's part of the whole idea with this, and I think it's more very relevant within manufacturing, is the whole idea about single source of truth. Because you get versions, not one thing happens. It's like 20 things happen, right? And then how do we determine what's real, what's not? So one of the unique things that we do around this is that we're able to create custom metadata schemas and fields that can be unique to the organization, unique down even to a department or a single user that define something. So it's adding in information, it's getting instructions set, adding blockchain into it, whatever the case may be, where that is now able to trigger processes to kick off some sort of operation. So it's orchestrating, automatically or autonomously orchestrating processes. And that removes the ability to go and copy paste, copying things on email. Because when you start doing that and you start doing that repetitively over time, human nature, we're going to make a mistake, right? I've done it, you've done it, we've all done it. So if you're able to then preserve that data lineage, understand where it came from, allow somebody else to affect and easily do what they need to do with the data to now run their role, complete their task that enables the next person to do the same thing. You've just completely automated the entire process and reduced errors and mistakes down to almost zero.
Yeah, but I can see how there's a lot of great applications for that. Think a little bit more strategically here. I want to jump in a little more into thinking about some strategic advantages and thinking particularly in terms of cloud migration and AI initiatives. Tell me a little bit more there about some of the advantages.
So we started supporting cloud early on because we saw it as it was going to be another storage silo, is the way we saw it. Everyone's like, oh, it's a panacea, right? Especially during COVID, everyone swallowed the blue pill. We don't have to manage our operation. We can move everything up to cloud. It promises to do exactly the same thing that we're doing, but without all the cost. Sounds great. The reality of it didn't really work out that way because what everyone found out is once you move it into that environment, it now becomes a silo within itself. And you're also dealing with the limitations of how I get access to the data and how I can bring it back. And if I'm not careful, my cost is going to skyrocket. So we see organizations like that moved everything up to the cloud. And now they're running all of these queries against it. So, it was like zero cost to move it up. But their operational costs, because there's hundreds of thousands or more queries going on against all the data, their operational costs are 10x to 20x what they were. So that was never, well, it was in the fine print, just no one understood it. So those are all becoming the orchestration challenge of how do I get files to be in the right place at the right time and being presented in the way that my application or user, whoever it is, can actually do something with it. And so we see a lot of organizations out there right now who've made that transition. They're making everything work, but at a tremendous cost. They're now employing a lot of people. There's a lot of automation or scripts that are trying to go through and patchwork this, or it's taking an army of tech folks within the organization just to try to manage it, to keep the lid on. And so one of the challenges around that is, okay, this didn't work the way we wanted. Let's start over. Let's grab all the data and bring it back. Well, the cost of egress is 10 times the cost it took to put up there or more. So that dump truck download is not cost effective. It's a low cost to get it up there with the dump truck, but getting it back is not as easy. So what we can do is look at, well, let's do a little more intelligently. How about if we can add some intelligence to this and decide how do we start to create more of like a hybrid? Because cloud has an amazing operational value if it's implemented correctly. So we can go in, and what we can do is actually scan the entire cloud or clouds, depending on if it's a multi-cloud environment, and now bring back and virtualize. Okay, what do we have? So if we virtualize it, now you're no longer running queries against the data sets. You're running queries against the virtualized representation of the data set. So the cost of query now drops to zero. There's one. And then once you access something, you can go in and now just pull the file. So you're now just paying for the egress cost of those simple data files. That's one way. Second is, how about if we need to like move files back into our data center, terrestrial? We don't know what we need. We're being told we need to get everything out. Well, again, if we can go in and scan it, we can now go through and intelligently identify which file is being used for what. Well, again, just like we did when we scanned it before, right? First time you can get visibility to everything and the data use, data access, do the same thing from cloud and identify which of these files are actually providing value of what's needed for this particular application. Then we can start marking those and classifying it. So data classification of what files go with what use, how are you implementing it, and it's a unique classification that can now get very granular and detailed. At that point, you're able to then use all of that metadata that's been assigned and classified for this data set and start intelligently pulling down just the bits and the pieces that are needed. So now your egress cost is like a tenth or lower of what it was supposed to be. So now you're getting all the data you need in order to right size the process of the company and the applications that are needed. So you're not running through all these costly gyrations, and you've now minimized your operational cost back to an acceptable level, which I think, provides a tremendous value of helping companies who've made these decisions actually now right size the ship in order to be successful with it.
Yep. And I think the ROI is just a big one, right? I'm sure that we get asked that at IPX. What am I going to save by implementing CM2 or PLM or ERP or whatever the tool may be, right? And so a lot of these tools have these algorithms that they use to calculate, here's the estimated savings. But we often like to bring it back to what are your problems you're trying to solve? Let's talk about this tactically. Like, this is the problem you have. Let's cost what that is. Let's take a look at what that is costing your business. And then here's how we can help that. And so I'm guessing that you have to justify that in a very similar way.
Yes, we do.
Any
Yes,
kind of guidance that you would give people who are saying, hey, this looks like a really nice tool. I'd really love to have this. But thinking about the actual benefit to the business, to the bottom line, is not an easy answer.
No, it's not. It's not something where you can go up and say, well, I'm going to buy a new car, right? Or I'm going to buy this. And this one's 20,000, this one's 10,000. Well, I'll save $10,000 if I buy the $10,000 one. But maybe not, because then you have to look at then, okay, what is the impact on the organization, right? So what are we doing today? First off, obviously we're talking because there's something wrong. There's something going on, that there's some pain, some challenge. We got everything working. We got everything running fine, but there's no way on God's green earth we can scale or we can grow because my people will kill me. Okay, well, that's a challenge. That's a problem. So it's looking at that. Okay, how are you doing it today and why? And then if you look at it and say, okay, if we put this in, is there a cost associated with it? Yes. What that is, well, it's scalable. We can be very economical and we can also be very comprehensive in all areas in between. So it's more of looking at what makes sense. When I deal with something, it's never dealing on here's the price of it. It's more of what is going on? How would you like it to be better? What's the cost of business right now? That operational cost. Then if we put something in that can provide automation, and provide some seamless processes. Now, what does that operational cost look like? And so, it comes very, very easily able to start justifying something. A great example of that is like AI initiatives, right? AI is the new buzzword. Everyone needs to put AI in it. Well, everyone used to want to put cloud in too. Okay, maybe there's some buyer's remorse there, but there's also a lot of wins and a lot of real good implementations of it. So with AI, on all these initiatives, what I find interesting is that there's a lot of power and there's a lot of benefit that could be done by doing it. But just like anything, it's how do you do it the right way? Because we can go through, and if you talk to anyone who's going to do it, say, give me everything you got, upload it up to the cloud compute or run it through the AI compute, and then we'll give you the output. Well, how about if I don't need anything? Don't worry about it. We'll tell you afterwards what you need and what you don't need. Okay. So what you don't need and don't need usually is about a 60% delta. 60% of the stuff you put up there, that's about what you needed. Now, to put everything up there just costs you $10 million to run through the AI compute, just as an example. So that means I'm actually using $6 million of stuff that I actually can use and get benefit from. And there's $4 million I spent that I'm not going to get any value of whatsoever. Wouldn't that be great to know beforehand? If you could add a little bit of data value chain in front, some data classification, add some intelligence to go through and say, before we run, move, and do everything, before we go through this exercise, it's going to take us 3 to 6 months to do this by hand and then upload everything just to get to the output of it works pretty well, but we're only actually using 60% of it. How about if we could go through, do all that work up front, upload just what's needed. Now we're shrinking that operational cost for AI compute down to 6 million, right? You've just saved 4 million. Now that's a great ROI of what could be done. In fact, I'll even give you the tool for free for that, and we'll split the cost difference.
Right? That's a win-win, man.
Right? So, I mean, that's where we're seeing a lot of this. And then, within AI also, if you look at an organization, especially in the enterprise itself, you've got all these silos of data. Getting access to some of the silos is challenging, and it's almost cost prohibitive to do that. So if you had a tool like Crystal Onyx that can go in, break down those silos, get you automated access so you know what's in the silo, and then be able to say, okay, yeah, we don't need all of that, but we need like these 10% of it. The 10% of this stuff that's over here is the gem that we really want to get access to. Great. Again, you've just filled in that one of the big challenges around creating a data value chain for AI. So there's a lot of advantages of having a tool like Crystal Onyx at your side that is just a very, very low impact, high value that can really make a difference in creating some of these outcomes and making sure that they're successful.
So thinking about the future, I think we've talked a ton about what Crystal Onyx can do today. Do you have any vision of where Crystal Onyx might be in the future? What other capabilities or what does the future look like for you guys?
Oh, we're going to be on the moon. That's it. Maybe Mars, right? I think we're going to Mars. So where we see next is we're going to continue, building out the value. And part of that, what we see is especially going into some of the AI compute. We've cut our teeth on high performance computing. I consider us one of the leaders in that space. And we've proven it working with the German Climate Center, University of Zurich, ETH, University of Michigan, and others, where it was creating the automation of being able to go from file systems to take data sets and allow labs and researchers to pull files in, run it through the compute platforms of the high performance compute, and then get output and then bring that back as part of the data set. So we've already really cut our teeth on that. And how do we support all of those different file systems? So as things are now moving into AI, the parallel file system support becomes paramount, right? So right now it's, you're seeing these file systems like parallel NFS, GPFS, Lustre. And depending on which group you're in, is going to be one of the preferred file systems. So we already support Lustre. We're now going to be adding to that, supporting parallel NFS as well as GPFS and then also GPFS. So those are all going to be as part of the use cases for how files get supported in these parallel file systems. And being able to support that natively as an InfiniBand system. Just speed, it provides a tremendous amount of speed and capability. So those are some of the next things that we're going to be releasing. Also adding to the ability of creating more of a worldwide federation support. So imagine being something like Boeing, Boeing with different manufacturing centers, right? Every manufacturing center having Crystal Onyx on it. If I need to access something from another location, it's not there. Being able to easily identify it and have that file be pulled out of an archive way off in the corner, dusted off, pulled back, and then restored back and copied over to my desktop. So it's finding things in the little crevices and little locations that are going to be really, I think, part of the critical nature of how we're going to be utilizing information and doing it in a way that is secure, but also transparent and seamless at the same time. So it's just adding some of those capabilities and doing this at scale, where it's going to be able to run this across multiple requests, thousands of requests, billions of files across all different types of storage environments. So that's kind of where I think we're heading next.
Okay. Amazing. Well, I look forward to staying in touch with you and seeing where we go and, all the great things that can be done with Crystal Onyx. Very
Thank
cool.
you, Brandy. I really appreciate the time. It's great to speak with you. I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hey, one more thing before we let you go is about our listeners. If they want to talk to you or someone on your team about Crystal Onyx and just understand more about the benefits it can provide for their businesses, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, thank you. So you can go visit us at the website, crystalonyx.com. It's CRYSTALONYX.com. You can reach us by email at info@crystalonyx.com. And you could also call the number. It's 818. That will actually come right into our office here and be happy to talk to anybody. We can be in help and service. Love to see what we can do and how we can help.
Okay, amazing. Thanks so much, Tony. It's great spending some time with you.
Likewise, Brandy. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe and review the show. And for more information on IPX, visit ipxhq.com.